Big LEZ'S League, an all rugby league experience.
Hello, welcome back to Big LEZ'S League, an all rugby league experience. I'm your host, Big Les. Let's take a look at the finals going into the next few weeks. We'll have a look back at finals week 1, the results from that, and then obviously predict the rest of finals. It is pretty similar to how we had it last week, but let's see if there are any changes. We've got the ladder predictor open. Let's have a look. But before that, make sure you click down below, subscribe to the podcast, become a part of the Big LEZ'S League community on the YouTube. Subscribe down below. Also, subscribe to the Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Instagram, Big LEZ'S League _ as well. Make sure you go ahead and give us a follow, but all of the links will be down below for you as well. Let's go through Finals Foresight week number 2. Looking back at week 1, we were 3 from 4. We were really hoping from that 4 for 4, but it just wasn't meant to be. Obviously, we had the Panthers beat the Roosters at the start of the week. We had the Storm beat the Sharks. We had the Cowboys beat the Newcastle Knights. And then the Seagulls, unfortunately, beat the Bulldogs, ending the Bulldogs' finals run, which we thought was going to go a little bit longer. But going into this week, I should say, we have the Sharks taking on the Cowboys and the Roosters taking on the Manly Seagulls. The Sharks and Roosters will be playing at home, it seems like. However, there has been a little bit of controversy about this. Obviously, the Sharks set to play at CommBank Stadium instead. Oh, actually, it's been changed. So they're both playing at Allianz Stadium now, it looks like. It looks like both teams will be playing at Allianz Stadium. I'm not sure if that's going to be updated soon. The rumors were that they'll be playing at CommBank Stadium. Looks like both teams will be playing at Allianz Stadium. Sharks v Cowboys will be on Friday, and then Roosters Seagulls on the Saturday. Let's go through these two games, though. For me, from what I've seen from the Sharks, I just think that, and look, it's not really looking at just the result against the Storm, but just throughout the year as well, and just with that side right now, I just feel like that they won't be able to contend with what the Cowboys are dishing up at the moment. I mean, we saw the second half from the Cowboys defensively, they were very strong, fixed up a lot of mistakes from that first half and shut down KP. What defensively they've done quite well, the Cowboys, as well as not only have they just improved around the board defensively, but they can sort of figure you out in the first 10 to 15 minutes, 20 minutes of the game, where your strike weapons are, who do they need to shut down in order to maintain the momentum, and guys that are going to play off the back of the momentum from the opposition, they tend to shut down very quickly. I mean, the second half, they had shut down Callum Ponga for majority, and obviously then got a ton of that momentum. The forwards were humming there through the middle off the back of Jason Taumalolo. Off the guys off the bench like Griffin Neame, even Ruben Cotter there through the middle was outstanding. But the Cowboys figure out teams within the first 20 to 30 minutes. I might even extend it to the 20 to 30 minute mark. And then defensively, they shut down what they need to shut down, and they just get on a bit of a roll there. So for me, I am going to take the Cowboys. I think the Cowboys are a little bit ahead of where the Sharks are right now. The Sharks can definitely win this game and blitz the Cowboys off the park. I have no doubt that they can do that. They have the ability to do that. But just where the Sharks are right now, they're still sort of getting used to, again, the combination of Hines and Trindle. I just feel like the Cowboys are going to win this game, potentially 13 plus, just with where the Cowboys are at right now. They've figured out a lot of things. I mean, the only thing we sort of had as an issue for them going into finals was their defense. They've fixed that up now. I feel like they are miles ahead, really, of where the Sharks are right now. I'm taking the Cowboys. Roosters and Manly Seagulls. Look, I really don't know. Radley coming back is going to be huge for the Roosters if that rumor is true. And obviously, by the time this podcast comes out, in fact, exactly when this podcast comes out, you'll be able to find out if Radley is back in this Roosters side. But if he is, it's going to be a huge inclusion, especially defensively, depending on what role they play Victor Radley in, whether it be on that right edge and Tupanua goes to the bench, or whether they have Radley coming off the bench, they use him if they need him there, just with a bit of leg speed through the middle. That's where I'd be playing Radley. But I really do think that it's going to be a tough one, especially with how the Seagulls came back late. I just don't think the Seagulls can win without Tom Trbojevic being 100%. I think that they need Trbojevic 100%, and with the Roosters obviously being embarrassed in that first half against the Panthers, and the Panthers putting on an absolute show and pretty much burying them in that first half. I do think that the Roosters are going to come out with a point to prove as well in this final series that, hey, we're still contenders. We're going to come out and put up a real fight in this final series and get to that prelim final. So I think the Roosters will win here. Again, this would be a game where it could be a tight one like we've seen last week. By the way, week 1 of final is probably the best footy that we've seen in a while and the best start to a final series that we've seen in a while as well. But I do think that this could either be that 1-12 sort of outcome, or it could be a 13-plus affair, depending on how you want to look at it. But I certainly wouldn't, completely count out either the Sharks or the Seagulls at winning these two games. I think both of these games could really go either way. I almost think as well it's probably one of the harder games to tip. Both of these games, they're probably the two hardest games to tip going into this weekend, and obviously then to determine how next week is going to look as well. So our tips are the Cowboys to beat the Sharks, the Roosters to beat the Seagulls. With that in mind, we move to the following week, which is pretty similar to how we already had it. Storm taking on the Roosters, Panthers taking on the Cowboys. Keep in mind for both of these games, the Melbourne Storm and the Penrith Panthers will be at home most likely. And I think for home for Penrith, that will be at a core, most likely. I don't think that they'll be playing at Bluebet again. They obviously had that big Bluebet last dance sort of thing, so I don't know if they'll be at Bluebet again. But it says here on the ladder predictor that Penrith and the Storm will be at home, so I'm assuming Melbourne will be at Amy Park and the Panthers will be at home at a core stadium, either a core stadium or at Allianz. It looks like they're playing both games at Allianz for this week, so maybe they add an extra game there at Allianz Stadium. We'll have to wait and see. But if both of these sides are at home, I do think that Melbourne definitely beat the Roosters. As I said, Melbourne and Penrith are just leagues ahead of everyone else at the moment. And Panthers, they beat the Cowboys. And that leaves us with a Panthers and Melbourne grand final, as we predicted before. Now, what I am going to say is this. Going into last week, I was firm on the opinion that the Melbourne Storm are well ahead of Penrith right now and that they would definitely win that grand final if they played tomorrow. Watching Penrith and how far they had come and how much they had lifted with Nathan Cleary back. Not only that, though, but in the space of a few weeks, and particularly what we saw from them coming into finals as well, the footy, they were playing very grindy games, only winning by 1-12 margins, getting it right in the depth as well for most of their games. The Dolphins game comes to mind. Obviously, the Parramatta Eels game comes to mind as well, winning right at the death. But in this one, it was just sort of absolutely outclassed and blitzed them in the first half and then play a tough brand of footy in the second. And look, it's been working for them. They've lifted. They've gone to a whole nother level. And what I did sort of say in the review of both of these games is this. I think that, for me, statistically, you go back and you look at all the stats. Obviously, Melbourne had the more impressive performance, but I was expecting that performance that they had against the Sharks. I was expecting that more than what I was expecting from Penrith against the Roosters, especially with the footy that we'd seen from Penrith in the lead up to this game. I expected Melbourne to go and do what they did to the Sharks more than what Penrith had come out and done to the Roosters in that first half. I think a lot of people can agree with that as well. I still think that Melbourne are a league ahead of Penrith, but I certainly think that gap has shortened significantly in the past week, especially off the back of the game the Penrith Panthers had against the Roosters. They are playing substantially better football. It's obvious to see. And I do think, as I said, that gap has really started to close itself to the point where this is probably going to be one of the harder grand finals to pick after next week. If the Panthers lift again and if Storm lift again, I just don't know how they're going to be able to pick this grand final because they're playing at such a high standard where both of these sides realistically are leagues ahead of every other team in this competition. And I think Guru said it perfectly. The other two teams will be playing for third and fourth. I really do think that this Storm and Panthers grand final is locked in. It is set in stone. And look, I could be early crowing it, but I doubt it. I think that this is the grand final. I think everyone is going to be thinking the same thing. If you have a different grand final, let me know in the comment section below. But I guarantee there won't be too many of you, because I think that the Storm and Panthers grand final is pretty much set in stone. This is the grand final we're going to see. As I said, let me know in the comments if you think differently, if you have any other tips that could differ from mine for weeks 2 and 3 of the finals before going into this grand final. Let me know. But we will see you guys in the next one. That is Finals Foresight for week 2 of the finals.